What if I told you that the most beautiful flower shop in Miami was actually a front for one of the most sophisticated heists in FBI history? I'm talking about a place where politicians bought anniversary bouquets, where celebrities ordered wedding arrangements, where wealthy retirees thought they were making the smartest investments of their lives. A shop so elegant, so trusted, that nobody questioned why the owner lived in a multi-million-dollar mansion or why her greenhouse was more secure than most banks. Have you ever walked into a business and felt completely safe, completely trusting? Have you ever made an investment that seemed too good to pass up? Maybe you've seen those ads promising incredible returns, or met someone whose credentials seemed absolutely perfect. Well, over 200 people thought they were making the investment of a lifetime when they handed their money to a brilliant botanist named Valentina Rosewood. They believed they were buying stakes in rare, exotic plants that would grow in value faster than any stock market portfolio. They trusted a woman with a PhD, a woman who donated to botanical gardens, a woman who seemed to genuinely care about plant conservation. Until $50 million vanished along with the woman they trusted. But here's what still keeps FBI agents awake at night. Here's what the federal investigators still can't figure out after 5 years of searching. How does someone disappear from a monitored building without leaving a trace? Security cameras captured Valentina walking into her flower shop on a Tuesday morning in September 2019. Her car keys were on her desk. Her purse was in her office. Her coffee was still warm. But she never walked out any door, never appeared on any exit camera, never triggered any alarm system. She simply vanished. The FBI has a $100,000 reward for information leading to her capture. Interpol has her on their most wanted list. But Valentina Rosewood outsmarted every federal agency in America and disappeared like she never existed. How do you steal $50 million and then vanish into thin air? How do you fool botanical experts, financial investigators, and surveillance systems all at the same time? If cases like this fascinate you, hit that subscribe button, because this story will leave you questioning everything you think you know about trust. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how someone can commit the perfect crime and why Valentina Rosewood might be the most dangerous fugitive you've never heard of. Because what happened in that flower shop in Coral Gables didn't just break federal law, it broke every rule about how sophisticated criminals operate. And the scariest part? She's still out there, somewhere in the world, probably planning her next move. Have you ever noticed how the most successful con artists hide in plain sight? They don't lurk in dark alleys or abandoned buildings. They operate from places you'd never suspect, places that scream legitimacy, success, and trust. Valentina Rosewood understood this perfectly. In the heart of Coral Gables, one of Miami's most exclusive neighborhoods, she built what appeared to be a botanical paradise. Petals Poison wasn't just any flower shop. It was the kind of place where a single arrangement could cost more than most people's monthly rent. Crystal chandeliers hung from exposed wooden beams. Imported marble countertops displayed exotic orchids that seemed to glow under perfectly positioned lighting. The air itself smelled like luxury, a carefully crafted blend of jasmine, vanilla, and something indefinably expensive. But here's what made Valentina truly dangerous. She had the credentials to back up every claim she made. PhD in Botany from the University of Miami. Published research papers on endangered plant species. Guest lectures at botanical conferences across 3 continents. When she told clients about the investment potential of rare plants, she wasn't just making sales pitches, she was delivering what sounded like academic lectures backed by decades of expertise. Her client list read like a who's who of South Florida power players. The mayor's wife ordered centerpieces for charity galas. A famous pop star flew in monthly arrangements to her Manhattan penthouse. Real estate moguls, retired CEOs, federal judges, they all trusted Valentina not just with their events, but with their money. Why wouldn't they? When you walked into her shop, you weren't just entering a business. You were stepping into what felt like a living museum. Glass cases displayed what she claimed were specimens worth more than luxury cars. Rare Madagascar orchids supposedly valued at $75,000 each. Ancient cycads that she insisted were living fossils, worth $150,000 per plant. The real masterpiece was her greenhouse facility behind the shop. This wasn't some backyard garden setup. This was a 5,000-square-foot climate-controlled research center that wouldn't look out of place at a major university. Temperature sensors, humidity controls, specialized lighting systems that mimicked natural rainforest conditions. Security cameras monitored every corner. Biometric locks protected access to the most valuable specimens. Visitors needed appointments and signed confidentiality agreements before entering. Valentina would guide them through like she was conducting a private tour of the world's most exclusive botanical collection. She'd point to a seemingly ordinary plant and explain how it was actually a newly discovered species worth $200,000. She'd show them growth charts, import certificates, insurance policies. Everything looked absolutely legitimate. But here's the twisted genius of her operation. Valentina really was a brilliant botanist. Her knowledge was genuine. Her passion for plants was real. She could discuss the molecular structure of plant alkaloids, the evolutionary history of flowering species, the conservation challenges facing tropical ecosystems. When she spoke about botany, every word was scientifically accurate. This is what made her so incredibly dangerous. She weaponized legitimate expertise to create the perfect cover for massive fraud. Her real botanical knowledge gave her credibility that no ordinary con artist could fake. When she told clients that rare plants were appreciating in value faster than traditional investments, she supported those claims with actual market data, real scientific research, and her own published papers. The scariest part? Most of what she told people about plant conservation and the exotic plant market was completely true. She just used those truths to hide an elaborate lie that would eventually steal $50 million from people who had every reason to trust her. Now here's where Valentina's plan gets truly diabolical. She didn't just run a simple con. She exploited a massive loophole in international law that most people don't even know exists. You see, certain endangered plant species can legally cross international borders with proper documentation. The problem? The verification process for these permits is shockingly inadequate. Customs officials aren't botanical experts. They can't tell the difference between a $200,000 rare orchid and a $50 houseplant that looks similar. They rely entirely on the paperwork. Valentina knew this, and she used it to build one of the most sophisticated fraud operations in modern history. Here's how it worked. She would purchase common plants from legitimate nurseries in Southeast Asia, South America, and Madagascar for less than $100 each. Then she'd create completely fake documentation claiming these ordinary plants were actually rare, endangered species worth between $50,000 and $200,000 each. The forged permits looked absolutely perfect. Official letterheads from government conservation agencies. Authentic-looking stamps and signatures. Scientific names that sounded legitimate to anyone who wasn't an expert. She even created fake chain of custody documents showing how these rare specimens had been legally obtained from approved conservation programs. But the real genius was what came next, the Botanical Investment Certificates. These weren't just pieces of paper. They were professionally designed documents that looked like stock certificates or bonds. Each one promised the holder ownership shares in specific rare plant collections. The certificates included detailed descriptions of the plants, their supposed conservation status, their projected growth rates, and their estimated future value. How many of us have fallen for something that sounded amazing on paper? Something that checked all the boxes, had all the right credentials, and seemed backed by real expertise? That's exactly what happened to Valentina's victims. Her sales pitch was absolutely brilliant. These specimens are living investments that grow in value as they mature. Unlike stocks or bonds, you can actually visit and see your investment growing in our climate-controlled conservatory. You're not just making money, you're contributing to global conservation efforts. She targeted two specific groups: wealthy retirees looking for stable investments, and plant enthusiasts who genuinely cared about conservation. Both groups had money to invest and reasons to trust someone with Valentina's credentials. For the retirees, she emphasized financial security. She'd show them charts proving that rare plants had outperformed the stock market over the past decade. She'd explain how plant investments were recession-proof because endangered species only became more valuable over time. She'd even offer payment plans that let them invest their retirement savings gradually. For the plant lovers, she appealed to their passion and their guilt. She'd explain how their investments were funding critical conservation research. She'd show them photos of destroyed rainforests and talk about species going extinct every day. She'd make them feel like heroes for putting their money into something that could save endangered plants. The psychology was perfect. She wasn't just selling investments. She was selling purpose, security, and the chance to be part of something bigger than themselves. Do you know someone who's been targeted by investment fraud? Maybe they fell for a cryptocurrency scheme or a real estate deal that seemed too good to pass up. This is exactly how it happens. Scammers don't just offer money, they offer emotions. They make you feel smart, special, and morally superior all at the same time. Valentina's clients paid anywhere from $25,000 to $500,000 for certificates representing ownership in plants that either didn't exist or were worth less than $50 each. One retired doctor invested his entire $800,000 pension believing he was buying stakes in a collection of rare African violets that would fund his retirement. A wealthy widow spent $400,000 on certificates for Madagascar orchids that she thought would help save endangered species while providing income for her grandchildren's education. These weren't stupid people. They were successful, educated individuals who had every reason to trust someone with Valentina's background. She had given them exactly what they needed to feel confident: expertise, documentation, and the ability to see their investments with their own eyes. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever been tempted by an investment that seemed too good to be true? Because what Valentina understood better than most criminals is that the best scams don't feel like scams at all. They feel like opportunities that only smart people are lucky enough to discover. Every criminal mastermind makes one critical mistake. For Valentina Rosewood, that mistake was underestimating a 68-year-old retired botanist named Dr. Helena Blackwood. Dr. Blackwood had spent 40 years studying tropical plants. She'd published research papers, led expeditions to remote rainforests, and could identify plant species that most experts had never even heard of. When she walked into Petals Poison in early 2019, she wasn't just another wealthy retiree looking for a good investment. She was someone who actually knew what she was looking at. Valentina's presentation was flawless, as always. She guided Dr. Blackwood through the greenhouse, pointing out rare specimens and explaining their conservation value. She showed her the certificates, the documentation, the insurance policies. Everything looked legitimate. Dr. Blackwood was impressed. So impressed that she invested $150,000 in certificates representing ownership stakes in what Valentina claimed were critically endangered Madagascan orchids and South American bromeliads. But then Dr. Blackwood did something that none of Valentina's other victims had done. She asked to visit her specific plants. Not just a general tour of the greenhouse. She wanted to see the actual specimens she had invested in. She wanted to photograph them, study their growth patterns, maybe even take some measurements for her own research. Valentina's response should have been simple. Of course, let me show you exactly which plants you own. Instead, she made excuses. The plants were in a sensitive growth phase and couldn't be disturbed. The insurance company had strict policies about visitor access. The climate control system was being upgraded and certain areas were off-limits. Week after week, month after month, Valentina found new reasons why Dr. Blackwood couldn't see her $150,000 investment. This is why you should always trust your gut. Dr. Blackwood's suspicions saved countless future victims. Something felt wrong. Dr. Blackwood had been around plants her entire career, and she knew that healthy specimens could handle occasional visitors. She knew that legitimate botanical facilities welcomed interested researchers. She knew that no insurance policy would prevent an owner from viewing their own property. So in March 2019, Dr. Blackwood contacted the Miami-Dade Financial Crimes Unit. Detective Marcus Rivera initially thought he was dealing with a simple business dispute. A customer unhappy with a flower shop's policies. Nothing that would require serious investigation. But Dr. Blackwood wasn't some angry customer. She was a scientist with specific concerns about specific claims. She brought Rivera detailed questions about plant species, import permits, and conservation certifications. She had done her homework. Rivera decided to dig deeper. His first step was contacting the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to verify the import permits that Valentina had shown Dr. Blackwood. What he discovered changed everything. Many of the permits were complete forgeries. Others had been issued for entirely different species than what Valentina claimed to be importing. Some showed import dates that didn't match the actual shipping records. But the most damning discovery was this. Several of the rare endangered species that Valentina was selling certificates for didn't exist at all. The scientific names on her documentation referred to plants that had never been classified by any botanical authority. Rivera realized he wasn't dealing with a business dispute anymore. He was looking at systematic fraud on a massive scale. When he expanded his investigation beyond Dr. Blackwood's case, he found dozens of other victims. Then hundreds. The fraud crossed state lines, with victims in California, New York, Texas, and throughout the Southeast. By June 2019, the case had been elevated to the FBI. Special Agent Catherine Valdez took over the investigation, bringing in forensic accountants, botanical experts, and international fraud specialists. What they discovered was staggering: a sophisticated network of shell companies, offshore accounts, and fraudulent documentation that had been operating for over 5 years. The scope kept expanding. Every document they examined revealed new layers of deception. Every victim they interviewed led them to more victims. What had started as one retired botanist's suspicions had exposed a $50 million fraud operation spanning multiple countries. But here's what made this case particularly frustrating for investigators. Valentina had been smart enough to mix real plants with fake ones, legitimate business practices with fraudulent ones. Some of her imports were actually rare and valuable, which made it harder to prove that others were fake. Some of her botanical certificates were genuine, which gave credibility to the forged ones. By September 2019, Agent Valdez had assembled enough evidence to arrest Valentina Rosewood on federal fraud charges. The team prepared search warrants for her shop, her greenhouse, and her Miami Beach mansion. They planned to execute those warrants on a Tuesday morning in September. They never got the chance. What Agent Valdez discovered during her investigation wasn't just fraud. It was a masterclass in financial engineering that would have impressed Wall Street executives. Valentina hadn't just created a fake plant business. She had built an entire ecosystem of legitimate and illegitimate operations so intertwined that even forensic accountants struggled to separate truth from fiction. The FBI traced her financial network through 17 different shell companies across 8 countries. Each company had a specific purpose: importing plants, providing botanical consulting, managing investment funds, purchasing real estate, or facilitating international transfers. On paper, every transaction looked completely legal. Tropical Botanical Research LLC handled her legitimate plant imports and donations to botanical gardens. Exotic Conservation Holdings managed the fraudulent investment certificates. International Flora Consulting provided cover for moving money between countries. Each company had proper business licenses, filed tax returns, and maintained bank accounts. But here's the truly brilliant part. Valentina used real botanical partnerships to legitimize her criminal enterprise. She had genuine relationships with botanical gardens in Costa Rica, Thailand, and Madagascar. She regularly donated actual rare plants to research institutions. She funded legitimate conservation projects and published scientific papers with respected botanists. Her name appeared on grant applications and research studies. These real activities gave her perfect cover for the fake ones. When customs officials or banking regulators questioned her international transfers, she could point to legitimate scientific collaborations. When investors asked for references, she could provide contacts at major universities and conservation organizations who genuinely respected her work. The money laundering operation was equally sophisticated. Valentina would move funds through the Cayman Islands using botanical consulting fees. She'd transfer money to Panama through conservation research grants. She'd send payments to Switzerland for rare plant acquisition costs. Every transaction had supporting documentation that looked completely legitimate to financial institutions. Purchase orders for rare plants, consulting contracts with research facilities, conservation project funding agreements. It all appeared to be standard international botanical business. Agent Valdez's team spent months tracking these financial flows. They discovered that Valentina had been systematically purchasing real estate across multiple states under different business names. A luxury condo in Aspen purchased by Mountain Flora Holdings. A beachfront property in the Outer Banks bought through Coastal Botanical Investments. A ranch in Montana acquired by High Plains Conservation Group. Each property purchase was justified by claims that she was establishing botanical research facilities or conservation centers. The documentation was so convincing that local zoning boards had approved several of these projects for tax breaks as environmental conservation efforts. The full scope of her victim list was staggering. Over 200 people across 15 states had purchased her fraudulent investment certificates. The victims included retired teachers, doctors, engineers, small business owners, and wealthy retirees. Ages ranged from 45 to 89. Total losses exceeded $50 million. But here's the most disturbing discovery. Many of her victims continued to defend her even after learning about the fraud charges. Several investors told FBI agents that Valentina had been helpful, knowledgeable, and genuinely passionate about plant conservation. They couldn't believe that someone who had donated plants to children's hospitals and funded rainforest protection could be a criminal. Some insisted that the charges must be mistakes or that she was being framed by competitors. This is the ultimate irony of Valentina's operation. Her real expertise in botany made her fraud possible, but it also made her victims trust her so completely that they couldn't accept the truth even when presented with evidence. She had weaponized not just her knowledge, but her genuine passion for plants. She had turned her legitimate scientific credentials into tools for massive theft. The very thing that made her qualified to run a botanical business was exactly what allowed her to steal $50 million from people who believed they were supporting conservation efforts. September 17, 2019. 8:47 a.m. Security cameras at Petals Poison captured Valentina Rosewood walking through the front door of her flower shop, just like she had every morning for the past 6 years. She wore a navy blue business suit, carried her usual leather briefcase, and stopped to check the overnight climate readings on her greenhouse monitoring system. She appeared calm, professional, completely normal. What she didn't know was that FBI agents were less than 12 hours away from executing search warrants on her shop, her greenhouse, and her Miami Beach mansion. Agent Valdez had spent weeks coordinating with local law enforcement, preparing for what should have been a straightforward arrest. What happened next defies every rule of surveillance, every principle of criminal investigation, and every assumption about how people disappear. At 9:15 a.m., Valentina's assistant arrived for work and found the shop exactly as it should be. The security system was armed, the cash register was locked, the greenhouse climate controls were running normally. Valentina's car sat in its reserved parking space. Her purse was on her desk, with her wallet, keys, and cell phone inside. Her coffee cup was still warm. But Valentina was gone. The security system recorded every entrance and exit to the building. Cameras monitored the front door, the back door, the greenhouse entrance, and the loading dock. Motion sensors covered every room. There were no blind spots, no gaps in coverage, no moments when the system went offline. Yet somehow, Valentina Rosewood had vanished without triggering a single sensor or appearing on a single frame of security footage after 8:47 a.m. When FBI agents arrived at 6 p.m. to execute their warrants, they found themselves investigating not just fraud, but an impossible disappearance that would haunt federal investigators for years. Agent Valdez's team spent days analyzing every second of security footage. They examined the building's architecture, searching for hidden passages or secret exits. They interviewed employees, customers, and delivery drivers. They checked nearby traffic cameras, ATM surveillance, and satellite imagery. Nothing. Valentina had simply ceased to exist. But the real shock came when they searched her greenhouse facility. Hidden behind a false wall in the climate control room, agents discovered a space that changed everything they thought they knew about Valentina's operation. This wasn't just a storage closet, it was a fully equipped escape room that she had been preparing for months. The hidden space contained multiple fake passports with her photograph but different names and nationalities. Stacks of currency from 12 different countries, totaling over $300,000 cash. Detailed maps of Central and South America with specific locations marked. Airline schedules, shipping manifests, and contact information for what appeared to be smuggling networks. But the most disturbing discovery was the sophisticated surveillance equipment she had been using to monitor law enforcement communications. Valentina had installed radio scanners capable of intercepting FBI radio frequencies. She had software that could decode encrypted police communications. She had been listening to Agent Valdez's team coordinate their investigation for weeks, maybe months. She knew exactly when they were planning to arrest her. The equipment log showed activity right up until 9:10 a.m. on September 17th, just minutes before her assistant arrived and found her missing. This meant Valentina had been sitting in her office that morning, listening to FBI agents finalize their arrest plans, knowing she had less than 9 hours before they arrived. She had calmly finished her coffee, gathered whatever she needed, and executed an escape plan that she had been perfecting for months. But how did she leave the building without being detected by her own security system? Agent Valdez believes Valentina had modified her surveillance equipment to create a brief window of invisibility. Either she had disabled specific cameras for crucial minutes, or she had discovered a blind spot that wasn't apparent to investigators. Some experts theorize she may have used the building's ventilation system or storm drainage tunnels. Others think she never left at all, that she had constructed a hiding place so sophisticated that even federal search teams couldn't find it, and she waited days or weeks before making her actual escape. Share this video if you think someone you know needs to hear this story, because this disappearance technique is something law enforcement is still studying. Federal agencies have changed their surveillance protocols because of what Valentina accomplished that morning. 5 years later, nobody knows how she did it. 5 years have passed since Valentina Rosewood vanished from her flower shop, and she remains one of the FBI's most elusive fugitives. The international manhunt began within hours of discovering her disappearance. Agent Valdez coordinated with Interpol, placing Valentina on their red notice list, their highest priority international wanted persons alert. Her photograph and details were distributed to law enforcement agencies in 194 countries. The FBI focused their initial search on locations where Valentina had established legitimate botanical connections. Costa Rica became a primary target because of her documented relationships with several orchid farms and research facilities there. Agents interviewed her contacts, searched properties she had visited, and monitored financial networks she might use. In December 2019, there was a promising lead. A botanical researcher in Costa Rica reported seeing a woman matching Valentina's description at a remote orchid cultivation facility near the Monteverde cloud forest. The woman had been asking detailed questions about rare species and seemed extremely knowledgeable about plant breeding techniques. By the time local authorities investigated, she was gone. Similar sightings followed in Thailand and the Philippines, both countries with thriving exotic plant industries where Valentina had conducted legitimate business. A plant dealer in Bangkok reported selling rare specimens to an American woman who paid cash and knew more about orchid genetics than most professional botanists. Security footage from the transaction was too blurry to confirm identification. In the Philippines, several contacts at botanical research stations reported visits from a woman asking about employment opportunities for conservation work. She spoke fluent English, demonstrated extensive plant knowledge, and seemed particularly interested in remote locations with limited internet connectivity. These sightings created a frustrating pattern for investigators. Valentina's expertise in botany gives her the perfect cover for staying hidden. She can work at botanical research facilities, remote farms, or conservation projects anywhere in the world where her knowledge would be valued and her presence wouldn't raise suspicions. Think about it. There are thousands of botanical research stations, plant farms, and conservation projects in remote locations across Central America, Southeast Asia, and South America. Many operate with minimal oversight, employ temporary researchers, and welcome knowledgeable volunteers. Valentina could move between these facilities, using different identities, contributing real expertise while staying completely off the grid. The FBI's challenge is unique in fugitive investigations. Most criminals on the run stick out in foreign countries because they lack local knowledge or useful skills. Valentina has specialized expertise that's valuable everywhere plants grow. She can support herself legitimately while remaining invisible to law enforcement. Agent Valdez told reporters that tracking Valentina is like chasing a ghost who can become useful anywhere she goes. Traditional fugitive tracking methods don't work when the person you're hunting has legitimate reasons to be in remote locations where law enforcement presence is minimal. The $100,000 reward for information leading to her capture remains active, but leads have become increasingly rare. The FBI updates her case file regularly, follows up on reported sightings, and maintains contact with botanical institutions worldwide. Recent intelligence suggests she may have established a permanent base in South America, possibly in Ecuador or Peru, where she could blend into the legitimate plant research community. Both countries have extensive biodiversity programs, active botanical research, and areas where outsiders with useful knowledge are welcomed without extensive background checks. Some investigators believe she's moved away from plant-related work entirely, using her fraudulent identities to establish completely new careers in different fields. Others think she's still working in botany but has changed her appearance significantly enough to avoid recognition. Where do you think Valentina Rosewood is right now? Is she working at a botanical research station in the Amazon, using her real expertise to study endangered species while hiding under a fake identity? Has she established a new life in some remote farming community where her plant knowledge makes her invaluable to local agriculture? Or has she moved to an entirely different continent, abandoning botany altogether to avoid detection? The truth is, she could be anywhere. And that's exactly what makes her so dangerous, and so impossible to catch. Every day she remains free, Valentina Rosewood proves that with enough planning, expertise, and preparation, it's still possible to disappear completely in our connected world. The question isn't whether the FBI will find her. The question is whether she'll ever make the mistake that finally brings her down. Valentina Rosewood's story isn't just about one woman's incredible escape from justice. It's a masterclass in how intelligent criminals exploit our most basic human instincts: trust, greed, and the desire to be part of something meaningful. The most important lesson from this case is how specialized knowledge can be weaponized against innocent people. Valentina didn't succeed because she was a master manipulator. She succeeded because she was a genuine expert who chose to use her expertise for criminal purposes. Her botanical knowledge wasn't fake. Her intentions were. This is what makes modern fraud so dangerous. We're not dealing with obvious scam artists selling fake watches on street corners. We're dealing with highly educated, credentialed professionals who understand exactly how to exploit our trust in expertise and authority. So how do you protect yourself from someone like Valentina Rosewood? First, always verify credentials independently. Don't just accept someone's word about their background, education, or professional relationships. Contact universities directly to confirm degrees. Check with professional organizations to verify memberships. Call references yourself rather than relying on provided testimonials. Second, be suspicious of investments you can't fully understand. If someone is asking you to put money into something that requires specialized knowledge to evaluate, get independent expert opinions. Valentina's victims couldn't assess the value of rare plants themselves, so they relied entirely on her expertise. That dependence made them vulnerable. Third, trust your instincts when something feels off. Dr. Helena Blackwood saved countless future victims because she insisted on seeing her investments despite Valentina's excuses. When someone won't let you verify your investment, when they make elaborate excuses for why you can't access what you've paid for, when they get defensive about reasonable questions, those are red flags you shouldn't ignore. Fourth, remember that real investments have real oversight and transparency. Legitimate investment opportunities come with regulatory compliance, third-party audits, and clear documentation that you can verify independently. If someone is offering you exclusive access to investments that aren't available through normal channels, ask yourself why. The too good to be true rule exists for a reason. Investments that promise exceptional returns with minimal risk usually deliver exceptional losses with maximum risk. If rare plants were really appreciating faster than traditional investments with no downside, major financial institutions would already be involved. But perhaps the most important lesson is this: criminals like Valentina succeed because they don't look like criminals. They look like successful professionals, respected experts, and trustworthy community members. They operate from legitimate businesses in upscale neighborhoods. They have real credentials and genuine expertise. The next Valentina Rosewood might not be selling plant investments. She might be offering cryptocurrency opportunities, rare art collections, or revolutionary technology investments. But she'll use the same tactics: real expertise to establish credibility, emotional appeals to bypass logical thinking, and sophisticated documentation to make fraud look legitimate. If this story taught you something new about protecting yourself from fraud, smash that like button and subscribe for more cases that could save you from becoming the next victim. And remember, Valentina Rosewood is still out there. The FBI believes she's using her botanical knowledge to hide in plain sight somewhere in the world. If you ever find yourself in a flower shop that seems too perfect, too exclusive, too good to be true, maybe it's time to trust your instincts and walk away.